Welcome to the Sabo Ross Experiment. We have liftoff. Woohoo!
I try to stay in a more positive headspace all the time. I mean, that's something you and I over the last few months have really connected on is, man, whenever something negative comes out, the other one will be like, let's just let the negative side go. And it's like, gone. Let's just keep going to the positive. Yeah. And that's what's made this so much more fun. It's been such a relief for me to get away from negativity that can sometimes consume you.
Oh, sure. I mean, I think everybody gets caught up in negativity. Everybody. Yeah. It's everywhere.
And my kind of more obsessive compulsive tendencies would keep me in that place longer than I should be. Yeah. And that's why I've been so grateful that we even do this podcast that really isn't all that defined yet. No, it's but not at the same time,
it's just it's a venting. It's a exercise of the brain. It's a talk about things that are happening. Talk about things that we know.
It's an exercise of creativity. Yeah. To stretch. We're making something. Yeah. And that's a great feeling.
I think one of the conversations that we had a little bit earlier, what I find fascinating is all this technology that we're using to create this podcast. Because I have worked on sports trucks, mobile trucks, and didn't know what half those guys did. I'm providing power or doing some lighting or something. And as you were filling me in of what a Black Magic switcher has built into it, I mean, what a game changer! Yeah, what a game changer.
We have this thing, this little $1,000 device that isn't that big. That's about this big. That does everything that an actual television studio could do and more.
Yeah. I remember, now if this is still the case, this is a couple years ago, I remember one of my friends who was a tech manager on live trucks. They carried a second truck around for like football games that all its job was to move that first down line, that yellow line, down the field. It took a whole truck.
To make that line appear
why, but
in real time to be able to see the line of where it's at.
And now I think I was talking to my son Zach, and I was talking about AI, but I was also talking about 5G. And just a couple years ago, it was all about 5G. Mm-hmm. And what they were doing with, for example, the Phoenix Suns NBA basketball team, they outfitted their stadium with these 5G sensors so that they could track players' motions because it was quick enough. You didn't need a slow motion camera. The sensors with 5G technology could capture how the guy released the ball, at what position, what angle.
The arc of the thing.
All that stuff.
Because I just saw the other day when I dropped in on my dad. My dad and my uncle were watching a golf tournament. In real time, they were tracking the ball.
Yes, they were, right?
With the arc and the speed. Yeah. In real time, all done with a camera. And the thing is, the CPU to do is probably same as an iPhone. It
don't take much now. Yeah.
It's probably the same as an iPhone now.
Now, this leads me to something else, because just a little bit on the robots. They've come to the point now. So now AI, a humanoid type robot, using, I don't know if they call it agentics, will study. So if you're a pianist or you're a athlete, that humanoid robot, with its AI power and processing of whatever that is, can now calculate all the different simulations of that person and their tendencies and all their moves. So we could replicate a star athlete in knowing the moves. Now, can its body yet, its mechanics do it? But they have shown, obviously like chess, they could, hard to beat in chess. But now they'll be come to the point where maybe they'll have events where it's just all robots are the athletes. Wouldn't that be interesting?
You could actually finally determine who would win between Michael Jordan.
Yes. They
and LeBron James.
Could give you the probabilities.
You could have the two robots that have studied. Yeah. You could basically feed two robots the entire history of both athletes and then actually pit them against each other and see who would actually win in their prime. That would be fascinating.
It would be fascinating.
And I think, again, it almost makes it seem like so much of what we've already experienced. Like if you've seen the movie and or read the book, Ready Player One.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I loved it.
Did you ever read the book?
No.
The book is phenomenal. Did you know that he's actually the writer's from Columbus, Ohio?
No.
He's from Columbus. And he was friends with my buddy George Kaliotis.
He was?
They were in an improv. They're friends still. They were in an improv group in the 90s together. So they knew each other. So yeah, what's fascinating about that is the fixation of the future of the 1980s is like, it almost feels like we've lived in the last generation that's going to remember kind of an original time frame where things were invented by us, not recreations as what we're experiencing, which makes a perfect segue to my topic.
Yeah, let's hear it.
So my topic is about technology and where we are in time versus intellectual property.
Okay, IP.
Meaning, in today's world, it's very different than it was even 30, 40 years ago, which is something as simple as Paul McCartney or John Lennon would write a song. They're credited as the songwriter. They wrote it. They recorded it. It's theirs. It wasn't really possible to do what we can do today, which is it was pretty clear at that point. They made it. They own it. They own the intellectual property of the written song and their recording. But today, you can rip that song apart into individual elements and then remix them and use them in other places.
Well, even before you get that detailed, think about Taylor Swift.
That's a great example.
All those, I don't know who.
So here's what happened with that. Yeah. It's very similar to another example I'll give, which is Def Leppard, who did it first.
Oh, really?
Def Leppard had a strange writer in their contract in the 1980s.
What do you mean? What do you mean by strange?
It was nobody else had this. They put in specifically.
Oh, you mean a writer in their contract?
They had a writer in their contract with the record label. And Def Leppard is one of the only people in the 80s that had this, which was they didn't allow the statement for recording to album, 8-track, then cassette, then CD. And then it said most people are going to, and any other recording medium not yet invented. They scratched that out. So when streaming came along, the record company could not sell the recordings of their albums to streaming. So that meant Def Leppard owned the recordings and the studio didn't when it came to streaming because it was not defined as a cassette, tape, CD, or record album. The record label owned the only rights to create those existing mediums at the time.
So wait, but you're saying that in a contract, that's how smart these record labels are, that perpetuity,
any medium not yet invented.
And they would sign it like, oh yeah, okay, go ahead.
When you're nobody and you're making your first record deal, you sign anything.
Yeah.
And so what happened was Def Leppard was in a great negotiating position because what happened was instead of giving the record label 60 to 70%, they re-recorded note for note all of their original albums and went directly from themselves to iTunes and streaming.
No, wait, they re-record them because why?
They own the rights to the written music, but the recordings themselves, they didn't own the recording that the studio owned. So the record label...
So they couldn't stream it, but they also couldn't stream it themselves because...
The record label couldn't stream it because they didn't have the rights.
Yeah.
But Def Leppard couldn't stream it because they don't have the rights to that exact audio recording. But by re-recording it, they were able to cut out their record label entirely and keep all the money.
So that parallels to Taylor Swift.
To Taylor Swift, who had the same thing. She had a record deal, and some manager or record owner bought the rights to her albums who she didn't like. Right. So she refused. She had the right to say no to streaming of those versions.
Yes.
But she had the right because she owns the copyright in the written sheet music and lyrics. She re-recorded all of her albums to spite them because then she streamed her new versions. And the record label couldn't do anything with the old versions. Except sell CDs, which no one buys.
And I don't think that she really changed them up because I remember listening.
She didn't change them much at all.
I don't think so. But so that's what allowed. I can't think of that guy's name. It was a big news thing.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, she did song for song for song. So you're saying that after he spent all that money,
she made it worthless.
It became worthless because now everybody wants the new cuts.
They want her versions because she said don't support this, and her fans were pretty loyal. And then she made enough money, and the value of the old versions plummeted. She bought them back herself.
Did she get them back?
She bought it all back in the last couple months.
That's brilliant.
So now she owns both versions.
Wow.
So very smart woman. And you know what I just saw about her in the news?
No.
Her and her husband.
Well, did she not?
Did she get married
She
yet?
didn't get married, as far as I know. That'd be big news.
Well, they may not be married. But I know they're at least engaged. That's formal.
Is it?
They paid off over $3 million of Kansas school kids' lunch bills that they couldn't afford to pay. At school, they end up working debt for lunches they can't afford.
Kids do?
Yeah.
Or parents?
Kids, well, through their parents too. But
Like sort of like a work-study kind of thing?
it's almost a work study, except they don't have a way to work it off because they can't work. But they basically accrue debt throughout their school career.
How much was the debt?
There was over $3 or $4 million of debt
for Kansas City schools.
Not just Kansas City, all of Kansas, state-wise.
Okay.
So Taylor and Travis paid their bill. So none of them owe anything right now.
Well, that's nice.
Just overnight,
Yeah.
paid all of their debt. Saying
come to that specific thing. It must have just been somebody
had said something. Somebody must. It's again power of the internet.
Yeah.
Somebody on social media could make a post that gets spread enough to where it gets seen by somebody like that. Could have been picked up on the news where they saw it. Could have been a friend of a friend. It could have been like her mom's friend could have seen it and then told her. You know what I mean? How that information spreads, you never know.
Right.
She could have just seen the news story about, isn't it tragic that these kids are accruing debt because they can't afford food? And so they can't graduate till they pay off the debt kind of thing. So she paid it all off for them, and it's amazing.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Travis Kelce, he didn't retire. So he's back again for another season.
At least.
I wonder how they're going to handle Taylor Swift this year. I don't know if it's such a big deal anymore for going to the football games.
No, it's now
that they've lost.
Now that they've lost, it's pretty.
It's heartbreaking. Now she got to experience what a lot of other fans have experienced.
Yeah,
heartbreak.
Everybody got to experience a little bit of heartbreak after that. It was so unexpected at the Super Bowl this year too.
Yeah, well,
but getting back to intellectual property,
IP.
Going back to intellectual property, it's kind of like it used to be 40 years ago in the 1980s. It was pretty clear cut. You made it, you own it. But today, thanks to digital technology, thanks to all the tools we have with Photoshop, digital editing, deep fake, AI voice. Who owns things? Who owns a meme? How many memes have we seen of like a hobbit saying something silly? How many times have we seen a politician making a face? Who owns that intellectual property?
One way to fix IP.
Okay.
The only way, I think, is through blockchain. Because blockchain, you register it, you're the owner for perpetuity, and it's on record.
But the thing is that still gets conflated because that doesn't account for the concept in music called a mashup.
Well, sure.
So you have a thing to where...
Well, you're talking about music. I'm talking
about all kinds of stuff, not just an image, but audio, all of it. Who owns the likeness of a person? Usually the person owns it.
Yeah.
But do you really own it if, like, think of how many people have been using those memes and they do Where Are They Now? And the person from a meme is a totally different person. They're all grown up or whatever. So that's one view. But when you talk about something like music, a great example of just a simple mashup is somebody actually took the song Ghostbusters by Ray Parker's Jr. and Huey Lewis in the News, I Want a New Drug. Mm-hmm. They're practically the same song. Somebody's mashed it up to where one verse has the music from Ghostbusters and the lyrics from Huey Lewis. The next verse is the opposite. It's the lyrics from Ghostbusters, but the music being played by Huey Lewis. And so who owns this new creation?
Well, I don't think that you can own it because you're using obviously two things that are owned by entities. So if you're making money off of it, there could be obviously a lawsuit.
Well, but even then, the lawsuit gets convoluted.
Yeah.
Because the lawsuit should be the basic idea of IP. Huey Lewis owns his song. Ray Parker owns his song. So those two could sue the creator of this mashup and be like, hey, that's mine, but is it theirs?
Yeah.
Because there's in the United States, we have a thing called fair use.
Sure.
And this is where, did you create a new work of art from the old art, which is an exemption from copyright? So it's a new work of art. So is it truly new when it's that basic? Of it, the new piece doesn't exist without the two prior pieces, but it is a new piece of work.
Yeah.
So when you talk about loss of money, it's like nobody who wants the Huey Lewis song is losing money by hearing this mashup. No one who wanted to hear just Ghostbusters lost money because of this new work.
Well,
so it's so...
Yeah, no, I hear what you're saying. I think just because I've experienced some of this stuff, if Huey Lewis's team or, whatever the estate is, whatever, and there are numerous companies that these people use that put out that letter. It starts basic.
Yeah.
If you don't do this, you don't, you know the story.
The cease and desist letters.
All that kind of stuff. But we are heading to a world of confused IP. There's no question.
Well, I think we're in the middle of that world right now.
Well, it's going to get a lot worse.
Yes.
Yeah. Which is, I think, where you're going.
There were things to where the famous filmmaker, the guy who did Contagion and Traffic and Aaron Brockovich, his name's Steven Soderbergh.
Mm-hmm.
He was doing re-edits of movies like Raiders of the Lost Ark and putting it on Vimeo for free. Like he made it black and white. He almost made it a silent film.
Yeah.
That doesn't really affect the sales of people who want to watch the real Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's not being affected by seeing it in black and white with no sound. But the copyright is now an issue. It's a new work, but it's not that new. So it's like, this is what I'm saying is we're in an era where with mashups, remixes, remakes, and then it gets into another concept when we talk about remakes, because one of the most famous films of all time is a Japanese film from Akira Kurosawa called The Seven Samurai. It was remade in the 1960s as The Magnificent Seven. Changed from
that was Magnificent Seven? I love that.
They actually credit the story to Akira Kurosawa because they had to. They licensed it. And it's a direct remake, but in moving it from samurai in medieval Japan to cowboys in the 1800s of the United States. A lesser known as a remake is there's another movie that blatantly uses that as the premise, which is Pixar's A Bug's Life is Seven Samurai, but they don't credit him.
Is it really? Seven Samurai?
Seven Samurai is a plot so that again becomes the era of at what point do you have to credit the inspiration? Because it's not samurai, it's now almost Seven Samurai itself is almost a trope. And so at what point did you stop having to credit that original source that's been ripped off so many times?
Well, they probably just keep, they do it intentionally to see what happens. It's like, all right, well, if we can get away with it, let's try.
There's also the idea of how much of it is inspiration, if that makes sense. So another example of that is, so I remember in college, I had to write a paper. I took a fluff class that was, you read a book, you see a movie based on the book, then you see a remake, and you write an analysis paper of all three. I was like, this will be the easiest class ever. And there were some obvious ones like Double Indemnity. Read the book, saw the 1941 movie, which is one of the original film noir films. And then I saw Lawrence Kasdan's movie, Body Heat, that doesn't credit Double Indemnity in any way, but it was a modernization of 1980 or 81. It's a blatant remake, but they have no credit to Double Indemnity. They changed just enough details where they didn't have to pay.
Yeah.
So where did that, so that's an old example. And the one that blew my mind was L. Frank Baum's book, The Wizard of Oz, the original movie, and then you would think The Wiz, Steven Spielberg's E.T. It's like, wait, what? E.T.? And it's like, actually, yeah. How many people did Dorothy have helping her? Tin Man, Cowardly Lion, and Scarecrow. How many kids in the family helped E.T.? Elliot, his sister, and his brother. Tell me if this doesn't ring familiar. There's No Place Like Home. E.T. Phone Home.
Oh,
the parallels, there's a ton of parallels there where I fought that tooth and nail until I found an article by the screenwriter, who was Harrison Ford's wife at the time, Melissa Matheson, who said, yeah, Steven told me to base this on the plot line of Wizard of Oz.
Are you serious?
And I was like, okay, now that I found formal proof, I accept it, that's what it was. But again, what is the difference between a remake or inspired by? How much, how exact does it have to be before you have to credit it? And it starts to get into that cyclical nature of, is there anything unique today?
Yeah. Well, geez. I now that you say that, I was talking about Ted Lasso. Mm-hmm. And before I watched Ted Lasso, I watched a show, and unfortunately I don't have the name of it, but Kurt Russell's daughter, trying to think what her name is.
Kate Hudson?
Yeah, Kate Hudson.
Okay, because that's adopted daughter, but yes.
Oh, is it adopted? Okay. Well, anyway, so Kate Hudson is in this show, and I loved it. And it was only one season. But she has two brothers. They all own a basketball team.
Okay.
Ring a bell at all? So this team has all the different types of players with different problems. Kate Hudson is having a kind of a problem with her relationship with her, I don't know if they're married or boyfriend. And then this little character, this boy that was out working there who delivers popcorn to the people, he suddenly gets involved and becomes more of a player. So all of a sudden I'm watching Ted Lasso and I'm like, wait a minute, that show was a ripoff of Ted Lasso. Sports team, a big blonde as the main character.
Oh, I got one better. I couldn't believe I didn't see it. Ted Lasso is a complete ripoff of Major League.
Oh, my God.
You have woman takes over the sports team from her ex-husband, wants to destroy it. Sound familiar?
Yeah.
Puts together this team that's supposed to fail. The intent is to fail, and it doesn't. It's like it's the same thing. But what's amazing about Ted Lasso and just modernized versions of stuff is they took that cliche from a late 80s, early 90s movie and turned it on its ear in that the mean woman was not a two-dimensional, why are you mean? It's the 80s. I'm just a bad guy in a movie. I don't have to have motivations or reasons.
That's right.
Whereas this one, they took the motivations and made it more emotional, more real, and with more depth. Another example of that would be there was the Karate Kid.
Yeah.
And the Karate Kid Part 2. But in that original Karate Kid, you had one of the most two-dimensional, blonde-haired, good-looking, rich kid bad guys.
You sure did.
Why are you mean? Because I'm written that way. It's like
that's Harry Potter.
It's like I don't have to have a reason.
Yeah,
I just am.
It's funny. The blonde-haired kid, is the meanie.
Yeah, and so what's funny though is when they did the new show called Cobra Kai.
Yeah, the older.
You took this literally two-dimensional bad guy and added three-dimensional depth to him. Yeah. They did an episode with, he had 3 friends in the original movie, 3 or 4 buddies in Cobra Kai that weren't even two-dimensional. They were more like 1.5-dimensional characters because they had no personalities other than we root for our mean friend for no reason who has no motivation. They had an episode with these guys and suddenly like one of them has cancer. They start explaining what their childhood was like that made them bad guys at the time. It's like, in the 2020s, it's like they take this 80s stuff and like, well, let's have actual reasons for everything, why people do things to make it more realistic. Yeah. And that's what happened with Ted Lasso and Cobra Kai is like in modern day, it's not good enough to just be, you're a bad guy. Why? Just because.
Well, taking all this now, as you and I know from large language models, they now will take all that data in. Will have scraped all those characters in that movie, so it is only going to get worse.
Yeah.
Or like you said, though, there could be developments of new characters based on all these in a mashup that creates a new character that is really unique.
Yes. But I think that's the weird part is like I'm torn on the idea of originality is becoming very subjective.
Well, yeah.
But at the same time, there are, right, like I found Ted Lasso so original that it didn't even occur to me how obviously it was ripping off Major League as a basic plot point. But what they did with it was very original. They went in a totally different direction and it became totally its own thing. Mm-hmm. So it is possible for originality to still poke through. To me, it's no different than after, heat or sun rays have just demolished a green pasture. Sooner or later, green is going to grow back up.
Yeah.
The same way, like on an old highway, when it gets sooner or later, nature will overtake it.
Yeah.
So it's the same thing where I think originality is in there somewhere for everybody. It just may take some time for it to come back into vogue. So yeah, to me, the thing is, but really getting back into the technology aspects of it, meaning when it comes to the ability to create mashups or remixes or to take old movies and create new edits. I remember way back when there was a whole thing about, they called it the Phantom Edit, where some guy took The Phantom Menace by Star Wars, edited 20 minutes out and made a better version of the movie. But Lucasfilm was livid and charged the guy criminally.
Did he really?
When he eventually got caught. Because part of what he was doing is he would rent The Phantom Menace from Blockbuster and tape over it with his version.
Oh, that's brilliant.
So that was kind of like, oh, that's why they're angry at you. But it's kind of relevant because he went a little over the edge. But today you have what they call fan edits all over the place. And so fan edits are very much a thing. As a matter of fact, I had a private discussion with a guy who edited the latest Alien Romulus because I felt like, man, wish they just cut out this last 20 minutes. And this guy goes on Reddit, goes, I have a version with the last 20 minutes cut out. I'm like, hey, can I get a copy? He's like, here it is. And so I download. I'm like, damn, this is a better version of the movie than what was in theaters.
Wow.
Full 4K, surround sound, everything. And it was like, yeah, there's all kinds of stuff like that that's out there. And the questions, but Disney, which owns Fox, which owns Hulu, that put it out, was like, no, don't do that. And it's kind of like, did this really affect your sales? What did this do to damage you? And it really makes me wonder if at some point, when is that line going to just disappear to just unleash creativity in re-editing things that exist?
Yeah. Well, I think it's going to happen probably really, really soon, because of the ability to access all the data that you know a lot about that other people don't. And the thing is, eventually the different generations aren't going to know where these things originated from.
And it won't matter.
Yeah.
Because they're just going to see I think that's the thing about generationally. I think young people today, kids that are under 10, by the time they're 25, I think the concept, because here's a big debate we had early on, almost 20 years ago when Horrors of War first came out. I got into a debate with young people about torrenting the movie. They're like, there's nothing wrong with torrenting and stealing the movie. I'm like, I won't get paid. No one in South America will buy the movie now because it's available on torrents. So I lost money from you downloading stuff. So I'm on this side. And they're like, and the thing they seemed to be missing was the concept of time. Because if you had told me I would like Peter Gabriel, I'd have said you were nuts. But today, I buy every Peter Gabriel CD.
I see. Yeah.
And so the concept of time was missing, which is you may not have liked the movie then, but if you liked it later, you might have bought it. But if you already had it for free, why would you buy it?
Yeah.
That's where the digital version of theft came in. Because it's digital and it's intellectual property, the idea of theft is a completely different thing. Whereas, like, if in the 80s, if I'd gone into my neighbor's house and stole 2 records from their shelf, I would have been arrested, or my parents would have spanked me and grounded me. Whereas today, when it's digital theft, the parents are asking the kids, here's a list of albums I want you to download for me illegally. You see what I mean? Like, the moral compass is gone, and because it's not a physical theft, they don't think it's theft.
Yeah.
If there's not the physical act of stealing, they don't feel like intellectual property is theft. And that's just straight up torrenting and stealing things. And that's the thing, is because it's no longer a physical property, there's no longer this idea of theft in the same vein. And that, to me, is one of the most fascinating things, because is it theft to steal something if you're not taking it from someone and they no longer have it? If it's a digital copy, is that theft? Mm-hmm. So think of it on that level. What do you think of that? Is it theft? If you're not deprived of the original item, is it theft?
I don't know. It's getting over my head.
See, that's what makes the technology and the moral ambiguity kicks in.
Well, the thing that you're going to be hearing a lot about that may somehow parallel with this, and then I think we probably could wrap it up.
Yeah.
The big thing that's happening now, when we talk about AI and we talk about the robots, it's called digital twins. And digital twins is going to be the next big thing, because what it does, it allows, if you have something built and you did all the work, and you know, like, this assembly line works, or this works, or what's going to happen is by studying that through the AI or whatever, they're able to recreate what took you years and create a digital twin. Then at that point, they put that digital twin into operation, whatever that is. If it's a talking animal or a car manufacturing facility, once that IP that they had, that secret sauce, is learned, they're cloning. So now everything is going to be cloned. I guess maybe that's the right word. But digital twins, that is going to be the problem for IP, because once they create these twins, then they create another version and another version and another. And it's like Multiplicity, that movie.
Yes.
Michael Keaton.
Yep. They just did a new version in a sci-fi sense called Mickey 17.
Oh, is that right?
It's about somebody that gets cloned to do, on a space mission. It's like, well, anything dangerous, we make the clone do. Yes. And when he dies, they just print a new one.
Yes. And that's what digital twins is going to be like. Now, they're using that for medical science. Somebody that's thinking, clone 7 more thinkers. Not all of them are going to be as sharp as that first thinker, but they're still going to add something to help create a new thing that didn't exist, by combining until finally something spits out and you're like, hey, that thing got 3 legs and 7 eyes, but that's our new bartender.
Yep.
8-arm bartender.
Yep.
So,
and that's the whole thing.
So you're not going to know what IP is eventually.
IP is it's an evolving concept. It's no longer the black and white that it used to be, because even just the concept of cloning itself, not even of a human, but cloning of an idea, meaning,
yes.
If in the 80s, if you wanted to steal music, you had to steal a cassette or an album, and deprive someone that had it, and you now have it.
Yeah.
If they were able to give you an exact copy of the album and they never lost their copy, was it theft?
Yeah. Well, AI is going to say no, because when you think about anything that's digitized, right, we're still talking X's and O's, and they call them tokens. And it's sort of like doing DNA. You're taking bits and pieces from that original IP and rearranging them. And suddenly you're right. Is that theft?
Is it theft when it's been changed?
Yeah, I guess.
When you've created something new.
Yeah, because there are no more original ideas. Would you say that's true?
More or less. I mean, that harkens me back. I'm not going to get on a long run because we're going to wrap up here, but it reminds me of Joseph Campbell. Joseph Campbell wrote a book called Hero with a Thousand Faces, and that was one of the main premises of Star Wars, which is he basically said that he studied myth and mythology around the globe. He had this basic premise that said, there are no original stories. And the reason there aren't is because the human experience, if you think of it in its rawest form, is the same.
Yeah.
We're born.
Yeah.
We eat, we drink, we have sex, we have kids, and then we die. That's essentially the same no matter who you are, where you are, or when you were. And since that doesn't change, our stories can't really be that different.
Interesting.
So to me, in one regard, originality is subjective. And the other thing about it is you got to think of it in a broader sense of generationally. I love Star Wars because it's the first movie I saw in the theater, but a kid born today has got 12 or 13 Star Wars movies and more than that in terms of streaming series. They have a totally different view of what Star Wars is and what it means. So the new Star Wars is going to mean more to them than it does to me. But the old Star Wars is going to mean more to me than it does to them. So generationally.
Yeah. Well, you know, the one, can we wrap it up after this?
Absolutely.
The one thing that somebody brought to my attention when you talk about generations and different things, for example, your father, your grandfather, okay, they had a lot of material things that you can touch, move, you got to pick up, you got to store, you got to keep somewhere. So let's just take photos.
Yep.
What you start to realize, and it's really sad, is you go down 2 generations, that second generation down, and there's a photo of your great-grandfather. You know maybe who that is, but your son doesn't, nor takes an interest in knowing who that person is. And then those things start to just fade away and disappear. And it was part of how that person got there. And that goes along with everything. You know, how electric cars started or how a steam engine started. A lot of people don't realize, you know, this stuff that we have today, it did start long time ago. But there's no apprehension of it.
There's no understanding of the continuity.
Yeah, what it took.
Of where and how we got to where we are today.
And it is sad that we are starting to lose our values up to where we came from, who we are, and what we represent. Like in DNA. I don't mean like, you know, represent mentally or whatever. But everybody, you know, you have a certain tendencies, you have certain things about your character that really, it comes from way back. We call it the old country.
Exactly. All right. So that, I think that's a great place for us to leave off for today. Yeah. I mean, I really wanted to talk about this IP stuff. We talked about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, we did.
And this is always so fun to talk about.
The sun's out now.
Now the sun's out. We started out, it looked like nighttime. The site you hooked me up with that I love, Opus.
Oh, Opus.
Fantastic service.
Yeah.
Again, AI works phenomenally well in creating these little short vertical bits that just best thing we've used in a while.
Yeah. I mean, it's been great, and our YouTube for the shorts is going fantastic.
Yeah.
So our podcasts, at least our tidbits here and there are thousands and thousands of views, and that's great.